Hi, my name is Ravina, and I'm going to be reading Sleeping Beauty today. Really excited to be reading it to you guys. Um, I'm blind, so I'm going to be reading it using a braille display. And I hope you enjoy the book as much as I did when I read it. Alright. Once upon a time, in the days when there were fairies, a king and queen reigned in a country far away. Now this king and queen had plenty of money, plenty of fine clothes to wear, plenty of good things to eat and drink, and even a coach to ride out on every day. However, although they had been married many years, they had no children. This saddened them very much, as they desperately wanted a child. One day, as the queen was walking by the side of the river at the bottom of the garden, she saw a poor little fish that had thrown itself out of the water and lay gasping for breath and nearly dead on the bank. The queen took pity on the little fish and threw it back again into the river. Before it swam away, it raised its head out of the water and said, "I know what your wish is, and it shall come true in return for your kindness to me. You will soon have a daughter." What the little fish had said soon happened, and the queen had a little girl, so very beautiful that the king could not stop looking at her. He was so happy. He said he would throw a great party to show the child to all the land. So he asked his kinsmen, nobles, friends, and neighbors. But the queen said, "I will have the fairies, all that they might be kind and good to our little daughter." Now, there were 13 fairies in the kingdom, but as the king and queen only had 12 golden dishes to eat out of, they were forced to leave one of the fairies without asking her. So 12 fairies came, each with a high red cap on her head, red shoes with high heels on her feet, and a long white wand in her hand. After the feast was over, they gathered round in a ring and gave their best gifts to the little princess. One gave her goodness, another beauty, another riches, and so on, till she had all that was good in the world. Just as 11 of them had done blessing her, a great noise was heard in the courtyard, and word got out that the 13th fairy had come with a black cap on her head, black shoes on her feet, and a broomstick in her hand. She quickly came up into the dining hall. Now, as she had not been asked to the feast, she was very angry and scolded the king and queen very much and set out to take her revenge. So she cried out, "The king's daughter shall, in her 15th year, be wounded by a spindle and fall down dead." Then the 12th of the friendly fairies, who had not yet given her gift, came forward and said that the evil wish must be fulfilled, but that she could soften its mischief. So her gift was that the king's daughter should not die when she was wounded, but should only fall asleep for 100 years. However, the king hoped still to save his dear child altogether from the threatened evil. So he ordered that all the spindles in the kingdom be brought up and burnt. In the meantime, all the gifts of the first 11 fairies came true. The princess was beautiful, well-behaved, good, and wise. Everyone who knew her loved her so much. It happened that, on the very day she was 15 years old, the king and queen were not at home. and she was left alone in the palace. So she roved about and then looked at all the rooms and chambers, until at last she came to an old tower, to which there was a narrow staircase ending with a little door. In the door was a golden key, and when she turned it, the door sprang open, and there sat an old lady, spinning away very busily. "Why, how now, good mother?" said the princess. "What are you doing there?" "Spinning," said the old lady, nodding her head peacefully and humming a tune, while the wheel buzzed. "How prettily that little thing turns round," said the princess, who took the spindle and began to try to spin. But scarcely had she touched it before the fairy's evil wish came true. The spindle wounded her, and she fell down lifeless on the ground. However, she was not dead, but had only fallen asleep. The king and queen, who had just come home, and all their court, fell asleep too. The horses slept in the stable, the dogs in the court, the pigeons on the housetop, and even the very flies slept upon the walls. Even the fire on the hearth left off blazing and went to sleep. And the spit that was turning about with goose upon it for the king's dinner stood still. The cook who was at the moment pulling a kitchen boy and holding him by the ears, ready to give him a beating for something he had done amiss, let him go, and both fell asleep. The butler, who was slyly taking the ale, fell asleep with the jug at his lips. And everything stood still and slept soundly. Huge thorns of bushes grew around the palace, and became higher and higher and thicker. At last, the old palace was surrounded and hidden so that not even the roof or the chimneys could be seen. But there went a report through all the land of the beautiful sleeping princess. So that from time to time, several kings came to visit and tried to break through the thicket into the palace. This, however, none of them could do, for the thorns and bushes laid hold of them as it were for hands, and there they got stuck and could not escape. After many, many years, there came a king's son into the land. An old man told him the story of the thicket of thorns, how a beautiful princess lay sleeping, how there stood behind the palace, how wonderful princess lay sleeping with all her court. He was told how he had heard from his grandfather that many princes had come and had tried to break through the thicket, but they all got stuck, and fast. The young prince was not frightened. I will go see this sleeping princess. The old man tried to hinder him, but his mind was made up to go. Now that very day, 100 years were ended, and the prince came to the thicket. He saw nothing but beautiful flowers. He saw nothing but beautiful flowering, shrubs and shrubs. He got through them with ease. And they shut in after him. As thick as ever. Then he came at last to the palace, and there in the court lay the dogs, asleep. The horses were standing in the stables and on the roof. The pigeons sat fast asleep, with their heads under their wings. When he came into the palace, the flies were sleeping on the walls. The spit was standing, and the butler with the jug of ale at his lips was asleep. The maid sat with a chicken in her hand, ready to be plucked, and the cook in the kitchen was still holding up her hand, as if she was going to beat the boy. Then he went on still farther, and all was still, as he could hear every breath he drew. At last he came to the old tower, and opened the door of the little room, in which the princess was. There she lay fast asleep on a couch by the window. She looked so beautiful that he could not take his eyes off her. So he stooped down and gave her a kiss. But the moment he kissed her, she opened her eyes and awoke, smiled upon him, and they went out together. Soon the king and queen all awoke. All of the court gazed on each other with great wonder, and the horses shook themselves. The dogs jumped up and barked. The pigeons took their heads from under their wings, looked about, and flew into the fields. The flies on the walls buzzed again. The fire in the kitchen blazed. Up round went the spit with the goose for the king's dinner. Upon it, the butler finished his drink of ale. The maid went back to plucking the chicken. The cook gave the boy the box on the ear, and the prince and princess were married. And there was a tremendous wedding. They lived happily together for the rest of their lives. The end. I hope you've enjoyed this book, and I hope you have a great rest of your week and your day. Thank you for listening.